Well, we're continuing our discussion with John Pohlman. And John, you mentioned field days. And, during the 50s and 60s, we really expanded across the state with different research centers across the state, and they all had their field day. And that was a great way of getting information out at one time.
Yeah, it was. It was part social.
Right.
You'd have farmers together, and at one time I was a young farmer advisor here for the Columbia chapter. And what struck me was that farmers up at Harrisburg didn't know farmers down at Ashland. Now it may be less of that, but it was kind of neat to see those folks meeting and comparing notes and just doing shop talk on that.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like our professional meetings. Probably more got done in the hallway than inside the meeting itself.
Yeah, certainly.
People just talking. But that was a great way to get this information out that all these researchers were doing.
Exactly. And if I can quote Harry Miner one other time, he said, "John, I can go to a field day, and from the questions the farmers ask, I can have more research ideas to do than for the next year than I can ever take care of."
And that's true because they're some of the most creative people, the farmers. They're making their livelihood, so they gotta have they need to know some answers.
Yeah, I had someone focus on another person saying that they're a great observer, but they're a poor interpreter. And I think that's where the field days came in. Well, I see this happening. Maybe a purple streaks in corn. So what does that mean? And they could tell you what that was. Is that a deficiency? Is it cold weather? Is it genetic? Or what?
And they could get that personal relationship with these researchers.
Absolutely, yeah, because they'd see them year after year. Usually, same people. Some of those would change, so we'd come in bring in specialists, for whatever the topic was, and do that.
Talking about farmers, my dad made this is a personal story. Yeah. He observed, this is back in the late 70s into the 80s. He said, "You ever notice that when we grow grain sorghum versus corn and follow it with soybeans, following grain sorghum, we don't have to have near the herbicides applied as we do following corn?" Well, I was an undergraduate at the time, and I asked our weed science professor, and he kind of blew me off, said, "Oh, that's because you plant milo later and you put more herbicide on." Well, I didn't believe that. I didn't take that for no. So when I got into the situation where I could do some of my own research, I got with a couple of the faculty members, and we did the study, and my dad was right. And what my dad was observing was called allelopathy, produced by the grain sorghum that inhibited weed growth. And we actually published that. And my biggest regret is it's Reinbach and Kramer instead of Reinbach and Kramer.
The way it should have been. Yeah. So, and farmers are always coming up with these observations, because they have the varied soil types and climates, microclimates that they work in.
Right. And they say, "Well, can you do this? Can you do that?" And sometimes, no, we can't yet, but we're working on it.
Yes. Yeah.
So that probably reached a heyday, midpoint in your career, probably in the 80s? Maybe
even before I started.
That really reached the midpoint, didn't it?
Yes, yeah.
And then we started seeing kind of slip away.
Right. And I credit the seed companies, the beef organizations, whatever there are out there, because they provide that service to farmers, and frankly they'd probably do a better job of packaging it than we do. And there's a financial incentive, to them that they can see exactly back from that because of the relationship they have with the farmer. We sell you a product. We want you to do well. We want our product to do well. And here's the support we'll give you.
But you still needed the unbiased research from the MU.
Yes, yeah.
You still needed that to weed out, that may not be, if you really look at the return on investment, not as good as you think it is.
People still sell snake oil 2.0. Yes.
Right. And and something I also noticed, even today when we have field days, often our ag economists are the ones that get the most attention.
And that's what we heard in probably 2000. We did a review of farms and centers, and one of the things that came up, with the advisory committees is, yes, we want to know, management practices, but we also need to have the economics combined with that. So they can tell us, what's it worth and what's it going to cost us to do that.
You mentioned the word soil health a while ago, and that's a big thing. But one of our soil scientists kind of scolded us at a professional meeting, because he said only about 10% of all soil health manuscripts talk about yield. And you got to have both of them together.
Yes.
Because you can talk about great soil health all you want, which is good, but how's it impacting the bottom line?
Yes.
And we need to know that.
Yeah. Well, I think back to the beginning of the College of Ag and even third world countries these days. If you rely on that crop and someone says, well, if you use this seed, it'll produce time and a half of what your seed does, but you can't risk not being able to feed yourself or meet your payments. And so there's a great deal of risk in products that when you change after you know that something is working, to find something that's working better.
Right. And that's and let the research take that risk until they figure it out.
Yes.
Then you can. You mentioned third world countries. How many students from other countries came through our experiment stations and still do? It's just tremendous.
Yes. Well, and I recall a conversation years ago of, they said, these students come over here, they do well, and we hope that they can go back to their country. And when they go back, they can improve the agriculture there, because they have this knowledge. Then all of a sudden the government snatches them up because they have their doctorate or something like that. And, and we want that to happen because they're smart people. But unfortunately, agriculture is still left without a good leader and without a good researcher. So,
and one of the things that I learned from them is how wasteful we are with our food. Those students cannot believe we don't try to grow something on every inch of land that we got.
Yes.
Or we leave so much out in the field. Why did you do that?
Yes. Or even some of our advisory committee members I know tell us that for a research farm, I've got to make every acre that I own, pay for itself. And he said, you need to do the same thing. So,
but we also have to have good uniform land.
We do. Yeah. And I know at Bradford, we always kept one area back because we knew it was low in phosphorus. And that we kept that back for the soil scientists that needed to do a low phosphorus soil study.
Right. Well, you all even changed the gravel on the road for your soil scientists, you wouldn't lime it by accident.
Yeah, certain roads in in what we call the soil fertility areas were not limestone gravel.
Yeah. So. But I'm utilizing one of the fields on the annex that y'all purchased, because it was on the west side of a gravel road for how many, 75 years? The pH is about 1 unit more there.
From one side to the other?
So I use that to my advantage for research projects. So you got to take advantage of what you got, though, too. Low fertility or maybe some high pH that happen naturally.
Yeah. Well, you did some work down in southwest Missouri. And,
yes.
And the pH, the soil phosphorus down there was
in single digits.
Yes.
Yeah. And sometimes that's a good point. We have these research stations across the state because they offer different challenges for the farmers that we need to help address.
Yes, yeah. And I think early on in the college, or not even in the college, the farmers were suspect of fertilizer because they said, we think it burns our crops. Right. And I think what one of the deans assumed at that time was that you got a quick growth in the spring, but it couldn't keep up in the fall because it didn't have the root system. So we have again an observation, but maybe not a good interpretation of that.
Right, exactly, and that's what part of the researchers job is. So we went through this, our heyday of field days, industry started doing some, but we were still fairly consistent into the 80s. But then we started seeing that starting to slip, didn't we?
Yes. Yeah.
More and more. And then you and one of the faculty members who just passed away, Bill Weebold, had a great idea. Why don't you talk about your great idea about going away from a traditional field day to something more focused?
Yeah, well, I think the year before I started Bradford, which was 1977, they had 800 people at field day. And over the first few years after that, we slipped to 500 and 400.
And was this because of you?
Yeah, it could be. No. It could be. but we got to a point where he said, it's mainly us. We have a few farmers here, and that's our target. We have lots of industry folks. We have lots of government organizations, and that's a worthwhile endeavor, to get together and recognize what everyone else is doing. But we wanted to do something that we felt was more meaningful and was valuable. So we went to a workshop type of a process where you'd have some instruction maybe inside, and then you can go out to the field and actually put to practice what you had learned.
And some of this was train the trainer.
Yes.
Because you would train these extension folks or industry folks, and they would go out and make a big impact across the state.
Yeah, we had the crop injury diagnostic clinic that was started, and Kevin Bradley was a big player in that early on, and some others, we'd signed this before that. But we'd also have the geneticists, come in. I remember Bill Weebold had us extracting DNA from of our own, from that, and other, other topics of Laura Sweets with pathology,
Wayne Bailey with entomology.
Yeah,
I mean, it was so many, and I think like kind of like you're mentioning, it wasn't just extension people doing the training; it was our basic scientists too coming in too.
Yes,
to help with this, and it was very, very, very popular. And of course, the professionals could earn continuing education credits, which is very important.
Yeah, for certified crop advisor program.
Right. And but then again, when things are really good, they start getting copied.
Yep.
And again, industry started doing the same thing, with their own people.
Sure.
So we started seeing the numbers go down again.
Well, but what always intrigued me about these workshops was that you got the high tech, you've got the new chemistry, you've got the new seed coatings, you've got the new coatings on fertilizer. How do you apply that? When do you time it? And right. But some of the basic information was still the weed ID. That was always a big deal to look at identification of weeds and crop diseases. Some very basic type of information that you can apply every day.
Right. And maybe what's hot right now. I mean, we like right now, frog eye leaf spot. I remember when I was an undergraduate, we didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
And because I know one of our pathologists talked about it in class, and the professor thought nobody cares about that. That's not going to be an issue in Missouri. Well, 30 years later, it was. So you just never know. You get some of that basic background, and then at these workshops and clinics, and also field days that we still have, that's where you can find out the hot topic that people are worried about.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's hard to be present and have up to date information because some of that's just developing as that season goes along.
So now I think we're in the third phase of this. We went from field days to targeted workshops, and where we do a lot of our work now online.
Yes,
our videos, and Cheryl and I are learning. Shorter the video, the better.
I like that, personally.
Yeah. Oh, when I had to go try to figure out how to do something the other day, I found the shortest video possible and looked at it 2 or 3 times. I figured it out.
Yes. Well, whether I'm trying to replace a water pump on my car or whatever, that's kind of the go-to thing. And, farmers are like that too. Can they take off a day to go to a field day, and, are at night, can they, pull up from the internet the YouTube that they need to see to solve their problem,
right?
Or learn about it,
right? Because I was a certain weed I was curious about, and I did it in the evening on YouTube. You know, I looked at things like that to try to figure it out. So it is changing, and our colleges, agriculture is constantly changing with that.
Yes.
Now, I think, though, the best thing about field days that you cannot replace is lunch.
Well, that's a big draw.
It is, and the snacks and everything part of that, but also getting the ideas off different folks. I've presented at a lot of field days. I'm kind of like Harry Miner. I come back with a whole lot of good ideas.
Yes, everybody brings what's important on their plate, mm-hmm. and there may be something entirely new to you, but.
And the other thing that I liked about the live field days, that we have these workshops and clinics, and the students get to cut their teeth talking about their research. They get used to being out in front of people talking, and right before you went to the other way of the workshops, you had a field day, and I talked at that one of those about my research, my graduate student research, and my dad drove up 275 miles to come to it. And I was terrible speaker at the time. And I remember thinking, man, I did a terrible job. And I remember my dad in the truck going back to our house trying to come up with something good to say.
Yeah, well, and then you became this preacher style.
That's right. But you have to learn. And the only way you're going to learn is to get out in front of people. And that's what's so important with giving students that opportunity.
It is, yeah, and it doesn't matter if you go into industry and deal with farmers at that point, or if you go into education and university research and teach. It's important to know how to deliver your message.
Right, and in a way that they can understand it. Yes,
yeah. Well, I think developing the confidence is always the first part of it, and part of your delivery is going to make a difference on that. When we started on field days, a lot of the faculty and the deans would load up on a train and they'd stop at several different places across Missouri, and they would discuss different scenarios, and maybe soil health, maybe a selection of the best animal or what have you. Then they went to a truck and what clover is prosperity type of a thing. So we've gone out to the people, and I guess we're still doing that through podcasts and things like that, aren't we?
Yeah, we really are. Things haven't changed that much, but they just how we do it's a little bit different.
The delivery, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you talk about field days. We read much about when they used to have farmer days here at MU.
Yes,
you turn people all come to here, and it'd be a week-long event. And
yeah, and I don't know what it is now. It used to be the last week of January or
right
1st of February, mm-hmm. that the beef producers would meet, the certified seed companies, mm-hmm. public seed companies would meet. We'd have our Ag Day barbecue, and Dr. Hedrick would make this prime rib at that time, and I remember that part.
Well, I missed out on all this.
Well, you missed out on a good thing.
I did, but that's still part of that socialization, among farmers to really get good ideas, and the researchers.
Yes, a friend of mine that was with ALM Corporation. He said, we'll be able to contact people in different ways, but that face-to-face communication is still important.
Can you go anywhere hardly without seeing somebody that you knew? I mean, that you've worked with or known through your work?
Well, my nephew says not, so
that's right.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's amazing. And not only is it in Missouri, you were part of a couple of national organizations. The American Society of Agronomy, as well as the Research Center Administration Society. Yes. And so you knew people all over the United States.
Yeah, we go
to world.
Well, we had we had the group overseas, developing research equipment, and so I went to Versailles and Germany and in England, Cambridge, England, different conferences. And Clarence Swallow from K-State was the person that really got me interested in that. And we often think that we're the lead. And I was talking about when we had a lateral move irrigation system, and the gentleman from Israel said, yes, we've had that for years.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of who's there and can present that.
But one of the things that you also did is that you hired the right people to do some of this. I think like hiring Benton Naylor, for example, what he did to improve the equipment for everybody going across the state. You mentioned earlier Harry Miner's group going across the state, that he was able to get their equipment in good shape so that they could do this and not break down. But also the equipment he fabricated for the researchers was tremendous.
Yes, yeah. Being able to take an idea and make it into a workable piece of equipment was one of Benton's strengths, and maintenance was also part of it. When we hired him, a little Massey 35 combine that I don't think Benton would even fit inside anymore. I think he spent almost a month just welding up the inside of that combine, and I remember Carl Morris saying, "Boy, did that run smooth after that?" So. Well,
I think he was saying, let's fix it and let's change all the bearings so we don't have to change when they're in harvest.
Yes.
When you're 200 miles away, let's get this. Let's stay ahead of all of this. And having somebody being able to help with that was tremendous.
It was, yeah. And Benton was, he was a good welder. He was a machinist, and he knew agriculture too. So,
and then someone else, just quickly, you hired was Eric Lawman. Eric was fantastic working with the researchers. He actually understood how it all worked.
Yes,
and he was really good. And I inherited both of those. Going out, and some of the researchers didn't have a technician, but he could be that person that got the equipment ready for them and planned it and make sure it was up and taken care of.
Yeah, I remember a complaint somebody had against Eric one time was, we're going to plant this plot, and he's out there digging in the ground all the time, looking at the seed depth and placement. And I said, hey, if you don't do that,
that's right.
There's a price to be paid.
That's right, because once he got it right, then he was ready to go.
Yes.
But he was going to make sure it was done right. And that's so important to have those type of staff that can make sure you do a good job.
And as we go forward, we're getting fewer and fewer maybe people that actually grew up on a farm and actually use the planters and things like that. So it's important to have that service provided that the person knows how to do this in case a scientist doing basic research wants to take that research to the field. And how do we do that?
That's right, because many of our scientists anymore did not grow up on a farm.
Right.
Or even grow up in this country. So they're not used to it yet.
Yeah, we had postdocs from Kenya that said we have good soil, we have irrigation, we have good seed. What can go wrong?
Yeah.
And the red-winged blackbirds cleaned their clock twice that year. So,
and that comes from experience. All right, John, we could go on and talk about this because there's so much to talk about. But I really appreciate that you came out and talked about this. And let's get together again and maybe get 2 or 3 more of us, and we can all really get the big discussion.
Oh boy, yeah. Well, it was good being here, and it's a rewarding career for me to do that, and I always appreciated this young graduate student named Tim Reinbach coming into the office, and we'd sit down and talk for a while.
Oh, well, I'm surprised you didn't kick him off the farm a few times. We're not going to talk about that pig roast. Well, this is it for Tim's Take, and we'll talk to you next time.